I wanted, since I was the first, not to be the last.
Former Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, first woman on the Supreme Court, dies.
A belief in independence.
Former Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, who blazed trails as the first woman to sit on the Supreme Court, has died, the court announced Friday morning. O'Connor, 93, died due to complications related to advanced dementia, the court said.
I will do my best to serve the court.
O'Connor inspired generations of female lawyers, including the 5 women who served after her nomination on the High Court. They admired her path-marking success in a field that had been dominated by men. Over time, she became known as a moderate conservative and often the swing vote on hot-button social issues. She died after living to see a new conservative-leaning court overturn an abortion decision she helped pen in 1992, lower the bar between church and state, and set its sights on another area of interest to her: affirmative action. Chief Justice John Roberts described O'Connor as a patriot and a fiercely independent defender of the rule of law and an eloquent advocate for civics education. In 2018, O'Connor revealed in a letter that she'd been diagnosed with the beginning stages of dementia, probably Alzheimer's disease. While the final chapter of my life with dementia may be trying, nothing has diminished my gratitude and deep appreciation for the countless blessings of my life, she wrote. In nominating O'Connor for the bench in 1981, President Ronald Reagan called her truly a person for all seasons, possessing those unique qualities of temperament, fairness, intellectual capacity, and devotion to the public good which have characterized the 101 brethren who have preceded her. Growing up on the Lazy Bee Ranch in Arizona, O'Connor was known for her self-reliance and independence, traits she acquired as a young woman, branding cattle, driving tractors, and firing rifles. She has shown time and time again that she's a true cowgirl, the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said of O'Connor in a tribute in 2015. O'Connor stepped down from the court in 2006 to care for her husband who was ailing from Alzheimer's disease. President George W. Bush would go on to nominate Justice Samuel Alito to take her seat. A graduate of Stanford University, she went on to study at Stanford Law School, where she met and dated for a time her classmate, the late Chief Justice William Rehnquist. She would go on to marry another classmate, John O'Connor. Upon graduating, she was turned down by law firms because of her sex. Eventually, she started her own firm with her husband. Later, she served as an Arizona state senator as the first female majority leader. She was the judge of the Maricopa County Superior Court and in 1979, the Arizona Court of Appeals. We all bring with us to the court or to any task we undertake our own lifetime of experiences and background, O'Connor said in a 2003 CNN interview. My perceptions might be different than some of my colleagues, but at the end of the day, we all ought to be able to agree on some sensible solution to the problem, she said. Former O'Connor clerk James Foreman argued that her gender was not a factor in her jurisprudence. I don't think there's any decision you can say she reached this result because she's a woman, Foreman said. Key vote on abortion, affirmative action, Bush v. Gore. During her tenure, the court for a time was known informally as the O'Connor Court because she served as the deciding vote in so many controversial cases. She was perhaps best noted for her vote in Planned Parenthood v. Casey, a 1992 opinion that reaffirmed a woman's right to an abortion. Under the new ruling, a state could not impose an undue burden on a woman seeking an abortion. The opinion would be overturned in 2022 by a conservative court bolstered by 3 of President Donald Trump's nominees. O'Connor also wrote a 5-4 opinion upholding the University of Michigan Law School's affirmative action program in 2003. Nearly 2 decades later, the Supreme Court announced that it would take a fresh look at affirmative action during the 2022 term. She also penned the judgment of the court in 2004, ruling against George W. Bush administration's post-9/11 detainee policy, writing, "A state of war is not a blank check." She sided with the conservative side of the bench, however, in favor of Bush during the 2000 Bush v. Gore case that ensured the presidency for the Republican candidate and remained steadfast in supporting states' rights. While criticized at times for lacking a dedication to a hard and fast jurisprudential doctrine, she was known as the swing vote and a pragmatist who dealt with issues on a case-by-case basis. Former clerk Marcy Hamilton said anyone who spoke of O'Connor being a fence-sitter was off base. Those would be the people who have never met her, Hamilton said. Anyone who's met her knows that she makes up her own mind and is not at all concerned where anyone else is on the spectrum. Once she retired from the bench, her replacement, Alito, moved the court to the right on issues such as restrictions to abortion and campaign finance. It was Alito who would pen the 2022 decision overturning Roe v. Wade and Casey. After leaving the High Court and before her own diagnosis, O'Connor became an advocate for Alzheimer's disease. She also launched a website dedicated to encouraging young people to learn civics. Her husband died in 2009 and she leaves behind 3 sons. O'Connor was well aware of the symbolism of her place in history as the first female justice. Let me tell you one reason why I think it's important, and that is for the public generally to see and respect the fact that in positions of power and authority that women are well represented. O'Connor said in a 2003 interview with CNN that it's not an all-male governance as it once was. Reflections from my interview with trailblazing Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. I was saddened to hear about the passing of the inspirational former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor at the age of 93. I was fortunate to be able to interview her in 2009 about her deeply held convictions on the need for civic education and engagement. Her belief in the power of young people, as well as the vital need to have more women and diversity in government and on the Supreme Court, a path she trailblazed when she became the first Supreme Court Justice in 1981. Although she's renowned for being the first female in that role, O'Connor shared with me this poignant hope for equality. I believe that it is only a matter of time before the structural barriers to women or minorities are effectively dismantled. I look forward to the day when I'm thought of as the 102nd Supreme Court Justice rather than the first female Supreme Court Justice. A passionate advocate for civic education, O'Connor also spoke about a project she created after retiring from her esteemed 25-year career to educate people on the courts and our government, motivated by research she described as disheartening that showed that only a third of the public can even name the 3 branches of government. Yet 2/3 of Americans can name one of the judges from American Idol. O'Connor founded Our Courts, which is now iCivics, an online learning resource designed to teach students civics and inspire them to be active participants in our democracy. Since then, iCivics has become the nation's premier non-profit civic education provider of high quality, non-partisan, engaging, and free resources to more than 9 million students annually in all 50 states. Revisiting our interview, I was struck by how much timely wisdom and insights O'Connor had to share that still feel so relevant and powerful in this moment, especially given the current threats we face in this country, including attacks on voting rights and our democracy, wide-ranging political dysfunction in Washington, and a conservative-leaning court which overturned an abortion decision O'Connor helped write in 1992 and is now targeting affirmative action, another area of interest for O'Connor for which she was often the key vote. From the education of young people through iCivics to the generations of female lawyers she inspired, including the 5 women who served after her nomination on the High Court, O'Connor's legacy lives on in many ways. Here are some highlights from our interview. Was there any one observation of our society that motivated you to create Our Courts website, now known as iCivics.org? Sandra Day O'Connor. 2 observations compelled me to develop Our Courts. First, I was concerned about mounting attacks on our courts and judges. I've seen attacks on the judiciary before, of course, starting with the Impeach Earl Warren billboard on the highway near the Lazy Bee Ranch where I grew up. But recent attacks are broader and more vitriolic than any I've seen in my lifetime. That is not to say that judges are above criticism or that people should not voice disagreements with judicial decisions. The freedom to criticize judges and other public officials is necessary to a vibrant democracy. The problem comes when healthy criticism is replaced with more destructive intimidation and sanctions. My second observation was that many of these attacks stemmed from a fundamental misunderstanding of the role of the judicial branch of government. In fact, surveys show that approximately 75% of the public cannot distinguish the role of a judge from the role of the legislature. Only a third of the public can even name the three branches of government. Compare that to the 2/3 of Americans who can name one of the judges from American Idol, or the nearly 3/4 who can name two of the Three Stooges, and the numbers are disheartening. Without basic civic education, we cannot expect to preserve or improve our system of government. I hope the Our Courts website will be one small step in educating students about our government so they'll be empowered to effectively engage in civic discourse. Former Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, first woman on the Supreme Court, last words before she died. Weeping is not the same thing as crying. It takes your whole body to weep. And when it's over, you feel like you don't have any bones left to hold you up. Death must be so beautiful, to lie in the soft brown earth with the grasses waving above one's head and listen to silence, to have no yesterday and no tomorrow, to forget time, to forgive life, to be at peace.